So we can start with the opening verse. The Dharma incomparably profound and infinitely subtle is rarely met even in 100,000 million kalpas. Now we see it, hear it, receive and maintain it. May we completely realize the Tathagata's true meaning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This talk is dedicated to Marian Schmidt, and I'm glad his son is here, Arthur. So this is the first time from Poland that we see each other. Yeah, thank you for coming. So the last talk was a talk from Robert Thurman's translation of the Holy Teachings of Vimalakirti. And it's written in the traditional way, not hurried, but a lot of Buddhist background and different deities and demons and asuras and devas and the universe or the Buddha field is infinitely large. And when it becomes that way, your self-centeredness can't keep track of it. I think that's part of the idea. Your self-centeredness cannot hold on to its hold over you, because the myth, the reality, and the projection and imagination of this infinite Buddhist world that we live in, that we should be aware of. Because the apparent world, the world that appears before you, is not the real world. And so this section, the goddess, I have you know that I just joined the Polish women's movement. So this happens to be the chapter on the goddess. But actually, there's no female nor male. It's just conventional descriptions of what reality is. And if we don't resolve this conflict and suffering between the opposites, the dichotomies, the polarities, it's simple, we suffer. And so meditation is the most revolutionary thing humankind could ever do. So just in brief, we spoke about this many times before. Tathagata Zen. Zen, I thought my early years, I thought dhyana or Zen meant single pointed concentration. Is that what you try to do? If you're trying to do that, it's not Zen, because we're speaking about the Tathagata Zen, which includes the opposites. So this is very, very important. So in your sitting, the 5 skandhas, like we chant in the mornings, the 5 skandhas, the aggregates, creates the self-centered mind. And it's interesting that in ancient times, when Buddha presented it, it was called the 5 heaps or the 5 piles. So that's kind of interesting, because when it's a heap or a pile, there's no internal structure. It's just a heap. And that heap is form, which is the gross and physical elements, and the rest are psychological. Sensation, they say that's your aesthetic. Perception comes very close to your intellect, how you perceive things, rather than consciousness. Perception, and then comes volition, will, or discrimination, and or motivation, and after that comes consciousness. And interestingly, Robert Thurman has defines consciousness as a peer awareness prior to your conception. And then after that, he says, this is to be left unchallenged. But that's consciousness, so it's different from intellect. So when we sit, the simple process of sitting is that actually we're not doing anything. And this is the most revolutionary thing in humanity any human being could do, because we're always doing something. What is doing nothing? That's doing nothing. Nothing is happening. And that's why Zazen is not very interesting. Nobody's interested in Zazen because nothing is happening. And by rights, nothing is happening. So as we're sitting, I'm very happy because finally I feel that I can explain what I wanted to explain 20 or 30 years ago. That these skandhas, as we're sitting, because we're not doing anything, we're not trying to entertain our mind, we're not interested in thinking, we're just sitting there, that these skandhas do not interact. They're suspended. And when they are suspended, that means there's no ego. There's no self-centeredness. That's what you have to become aware of in your Zazen. This is your first realization. But you are doing it, or you're not doing it, but you're not aware of what you're doing. So that's it in a nutshell. I mean, isn't that great? That means if there's no ego, we see things as it is. Now that's specifically a Zen term. When you see things as it is, there's no projection, there's no comparison, there's no discrimination. The wall is just the wall. Evil is just evil. Good is just good. That's seeing. That's when the vertical, the absolute, and the horizontal, the relative, pass through each other and connect at that very point, and that's as it is. And so it's very interesting because when there's no ego, there's no self created in our sitting, there's no grasping. there's no doing. We're liberated because we are always grasping. We're always pulling something into ourselves or pushing something away. It's still grasping, but there's no grasping. So when there's no grasping, the basic principle of realization appears, but we still don't know it. And maybe that's why you need guidance, or you have to see a teacher to say, hey, that's it. Oh, for instance, some of you heard this story many times, is that there was a student, and he wasn't really an avid sitter, but he had some physical pain. So one day at home, he decided to sit in the garden because of the pain. And what happened to him, as he was telling me, he said a bird came and sat on his shoulder. And he told me, gee, I didn't know I was sitting that still. But little did he know, he had entered into one of the 4 liberations. So it is that just a very good example, because the bird recognizes the object because there is no self-centeredness, no person there. So that's one entry. There were 3 others, and they're not in any order or any significance. But that's the kernel. That's the stuff of Zen. Okay, so we go to the text, and I will read to you and make comments. And you remember Shariputra was the son of Shari. Putra's son, Shari, is they call his mother Shari because she looked like the Shari bird. So his name was called Shariputra. And you recall that the Buddha himself said that Shariputra, in the Heart Sutra we chant, was the most wisest person. I just want to read you this Bhagwan. It's one of the names of the Buddha. And to remember this. It says Lord Bhagavan. He has 10 other names, Tathagata, Buddha, etc. Lord is chosen as the title of Bhagavan because it is the term of greatest respect current in our sacred language, the Lord, as established for the deity in the Elizabethan version of the Bible. As the Buddha is clearly described in the scriptures as the supreme teachers of gods and humanity. He is the supreme teacher. He is not just a person, but he is the supreme teacher. He is the Lord. He is not an idea. He is not a person, but he represents to us the Buddha, the awakened possibility within ourselves. That's why he became Lord Buddha. But most people, when they read the word Buddha, they just pass over his name, but they have no idea the depth of his teaching. The depth, the wondrous depth of his teaching. Okay, that's Bhagavan. And you remember the story that the goddess was living in this house for 12 or 13 years, and Shariputra happened to have a conversation with her and she with him. And she noticed that because they had this wonderful dialogue between Manjusri, who was the Prince Manjusri, and he was the one that sat on the lion and did the proclamation of the lion's roar. He's another role, and he was the one that furthered people in their enlightenment, Prince Manjusri. And so after their discussion, which we talked about last time, the goddess came up and threw flowers, scattered flowers onto the people that were listening, and Manjusri and Vimalakirti. And when the flowers fell, flowers falling, it landed on everyone. And when they fell on Vimalakirti and Manjusri, the flowers naturally fell off. But when they fell on Shariputra, the arhats and disciples, they stuck onto the robes. And it was must have been a really funny scene, because Shariputra was trying to dust them, get rid of them. But they stuck to his robe, and he couldn't understand it. So the goddess said, don't say that these flowers are improper. And why? These flowers are proper indeed. Such flowers have neither constructed thoughts nor discrimination. But the elder Shariputra is both full of them. He was full of it, discrimination and constructive thought. Although he was wise, but he was still in that realm. Reverend Shariputra, see how these flowers do not stick to the bodies of these great spiritual heroes. The Bodhisattvas was not just enlightened being, but enlightened heroes. And we have to, as our practice matures and evolves, we will see that these people were the great heroes of our times. Sattva means heroes, like Buddha, a great hero. This is because they have eliminated constructual thoughts and discrimination. And this is written in the old style, but eliminated doesn't mean you have no more constructive thoughts or discrimination. But your discrimination turns into discrimination awareness. Your constructual thoughts are thoughts of awareness, because we need the relative to express the absolute. We need them both. So elimination may be not the correct word, but anyway, as it goes on, I skip a little bit. The Venerable Shariputra said to the goddess, "How long have you been in this home?" The goddess replied, "I have been here as long as the elder has been in liberation. And you remember, the Arhats, the saints, the Theravadan tradition is that they are liberated from the defilements through their practice of meditation. And the defilements is anger, greed, and ignorance. But they are still not liberated. The obstruction to emptiness. They do not understand or experience that. So Shariputra asks the goddess, how long have you been here? And the goddess says, I have been here as long as the elder has been in liberation. Shariputra asks, then how have you been in this house for quite some time? The goddess said, has the elder been in liberation for quite some time? She almost mirrors what he says. At that, the elder Shariputra became silent. The goddess continued, elder, you are foremost the wisest. Why do you not speak? Now, when it is your turn, you do not answer the question. Shariputra, since liberation is inexpressible, goddess, I don't know what to say. And the goddess says, all the syllables pronounced by the elder have the nature of liberation. Each syllable you verbalize has the nature of liberation. Why? Liberation is neither internal nor external, nor can it be apprehended apart from them. This is really beautiful. This is using everything, being used by everything. It's not that we're using it, we're being used by everything because we are open to it, because we're not doing anything. We are not grasping, we're not trying. Isn't that quite a beautiful sentence? Why? Liberation is neither internal nor external, nor can it be apprehended apart from internal and external. Likewise, syllables are neither internal nor external, nor can they be apprehended anywhere elsewise. Everything is, this is my comment, everything is liberation. That's why I hesitate at the word elimination. Elimination is liberation. Therefore, Reverend Shariputra, don't point to liberation by abandoning speech. You remember when Vimalakirti, in his small 10 square foot room with thousands of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the question is, how do you enter the gate or door of non-duality? And in the original text, it has all these, it has all these bodhisattvas answering, and there's page upon page, and that we usually don't see in Zen books or writings. Bodhisattvas that you've never heard of. And finally, it was Vimalakirti's turn. And when Vimalakirti, they asked, all the bodhisattvas and disciples asked Vimalakirti for his answer, how do you enter into non-duality? He answer was the great silence. Not doing anything. This is really the great silence. It's the demonstration and transmission of silence, the great silence, non-doing. Therefore, Reverend Shariputra, do not point to the liberation by abandoning speech. Why? The holy liberation is the equality of all things. The equality of all things, what it means here, exactly what I was saying before, is that when you sit and you do nothing, I mean, doing nothing is quite difficult, but it's possible, because if I could do it, you can do it. So doing nothing is the liberation, because there's no more grasping. There's no more duality. There's no polarity. There's no more suffering. Liberated. Equality of all things. So because the skandhas are not interacting, that means the ego, your self-centeredness is not created. That's the liberation. That's what they mean by the liberation. Equality of all things. Impartiality. And so we just have a few minutes left. Shariputra furthers the conversation, and he says, is not liberation the freedom from greed, anger, and ignorance? The goddess, liberation is freedom from desire, greed, anger, and ignorance. That is the teaching for the excessively proud, because that's their practice, to be free. That's what they do, to be free from these defilements. And she's hinting at this excessively proud, the Theravada school. But those free of pride are taught that the very nature of greed, anger, and ignorance is liberation. I mean, talk about grace. This, we're not trying to get rid of darkness, nor are we trying to grasp onto light. But each thing within in itself has the nature of liberation. This is Zen. This is what the goddess is speaking about. So I have to end. Maybe we have some time for some questions, if you like. And if you don't say anything, it's not the great silence. Uh-huh.
Roshi,
Yes.
when you talk about non-discrimination, is that the same as Toji, seeing all things equally?
Yes. Toji is the same thing.
Thank you.
Impartiality. You know, it's interesting. In his glossary, he brings up the word tolerance, and that tolerance is one of the, it's Yanti, and it's one of the 6 paramitas. Paramitas mean it's one of these things, or these ideas, or this reality. These 6 realities takes you over to the other shore, and the other shore is yourself, the heart of yourself. So one of them, Adanya is the first. It's about generosity. It's about giving. And one thing I learned when I first went to Japan, and maybe it was 1978, if you give something to someone, they will give back. But I was expecting people to give me something, but I never gave them anything. But then when you, not because of that idea, but when you want to, you are motivated to give someone something. And maybe the best thing that you treasure, that's really giving. You give that away, and then they will, maybe that person will return, but someone else will, something. A bird will give you a beautiful song out from your window. Something will come back. It's call and response. We don't have that anymore in our days. People say, "Hey, are you there?" No one answers because no one is there. But it's like that. Give and receiving, call and response. So this tolerance is kind of interesting, because at some point when you're practicing meditation, what happens for the first time that you're not interested in your thinking mind, in getting something or pushing something away, you're just, it's really the depth of openness, because you're tolerant to accept nothing. And when you accept nothing per se, that means you have everything, because nothing is behind everything, and everything is nothing. I mean, it sounds crazy talk, but this is the process. Because Shante, I thought it meant patience, and then Suzuki Roshi translated as constancy. But in this book, it's kind of interesting. It's tolerance. So you begin tolerating. You have the tolerance, because you've been sitting thousands of hours, and your mind is beginning, your state of mind, your character, your personality is getting used to accepting nothing and accepting doing nothing. This is tolerance. And this opens into the deepest form of open-mindedness. Tolerance. And it's not passive, it's active. We are not just passively being tolerant, but tolerance is a great thing. But in our world nowadays, tolerance is you want to avoid being tolerant. You want to be strong. But anyway, tolerance, active tolerance, is very forbidding for most people, because they don't want to be that open. They don't know where they're going to go. Okay? Someone else, please. Call and response.
Can I go?
Yes?
This reminds me of the Book of Nothing by the third Zen patriarch, and your flowers that were adhering on to the monks reminded me of back in the late 70s, when the autumn leaves were blowing all over, and this leaf, I was trying to get rid of it. It was on my leg. I picked it. It was a small little pamphlet on the Book of Nothing. And I thought, wow, that was a miracle for my whole life. I've been reading that The Great Way now for many years, and it's now starting to make sense to me. It's so many years. There were things that made sense, but a lot of it was like, huh? But now it's sinking, it's finally sinking in. But I love what you said. I always want to make it to these meetings, but sometimes I can't make it, but I just love coming here, because I feel that the sinking, when you say things just sink in there, including the body, because anyway, I better stop, because I have a tendency to go on, so I'll stop. But
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that's good. But the most important thing is the continuity and the resolve in sitting. That's where That's where it's at. And that's where you find it in your everyday life. Okay? That's the most important thing you could do for yourself and for everyone. Arthur, do you have something you'd like to say?
I wanted to thank you and the whole community for dedicating today's newsletter and today's talk to my family.
You
Yes,
have to talk loud.
I wanted to thank you and the whole community for dedicating this talk to the memory of my father. I mean, we were very moved when we saw the newsletter today, and tomorrow is his death anniversary. It's his third death anniversary, and we were very moved when we saw the newsletter and the fact that you dedicated this talk to him. So thank you.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you.
This is tomorrow. So tomorrow is his death anniversary. Again, thank you.
Okay, next talk will be continuing on the goddess. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
May the merit of this penetrate into each thing in all places, so that we, with all sentient beings, together realize the Buddha way. Bye.
Thank you, Roshi.
Thank you, Roshi.
Bye.
Thank you, Roshi.
Bye bye.
Thank
Bye.
you, Roshi.
Yeah. Today's a good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Today's a very good day. Yeah. Bye bye.
Thank you, Roshi.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Arthur, say hello to your mother.
Well, she's here. She's right here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Cześć. Cześć.
Yeah. Yes. Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry.
Do widzenia.
Yeah.
Do
Don't
widzenia.
Tell Arthur.
Yes.
Arthur, tell your mom I joined the Polish women's movement in Poland.
What I think?
No, just to let you know.
What?
He joined the Polish. It's a joke. It's a
joke?
It's the Polish.
Women movement? Yeah. I have nothing to do with this women.
Oh, no. Do widzenia.
Danuta, let's see, Kurak. Danuta Kurak. Okay? Do widzenia.
Cześć.
Far, vi kan tages ved bagefter.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, Cuba.
Bye, Cuba.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Janet.
Bye, cousin.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jose.